All right, well, let's go ahead and get this started. We'll call the meeting order at 6:10. Our agenda that we have set up for today is going to include going through discussion with our consultants, discussing site and site options, design, schedule, new business, and then we'll adjourn. For a roll call of who's on within our committee, we have myself, Derek Amati, we have Jared Driscoll, and we have Pete Walters and Wendy Happel. Not present right now are Donna Peavy, John Warner, and Christopher Walsh. So we'll open up with any discussions before we get started, if anybody has any questions. All right. Also on with us is Chief of the Department, John Nuttall, KBA, Sean Schmiegel, and then we have Richard Pomeroy and Tyler McDonald and Todd Costa as well from KBA. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll speak with the consultants. Who wants to go first?
I'd love to.
All right.
Good evening. I think it's important. We tried to get you some information today to give you a bit of a debrief as to where we've been over the last month and a half. I'll start with the Housing Authority. The last time we had spoken, the goal was to gain access to the interior parcel that the town had purchased or is interested in purchasing to accommodate the new project. But we had to get access approval across the Housing Authority property to even do investigations. It's been a long process getting to the point that we're at right now. I'm not going to go through where, all the trials and tribulations of it, but we did have our first meeting with the Housing Authority last Wednesday night or Tuesday night. It was January 19th. And the Housing Authority meets on a monthly basis. They do not meet any other time. We've been kind of struggling with that as well. But at that meeting, we presented a temporary access easement to cross over the Glenowitz Way parcel, which is 0 Glenowitz Way, which is owned by the Housing Authority, so that we could get our equipment in and do soil borings and our surveyors in to do topographical analysis and wetland surveys and so on and so forth. I would say that, and thank you, Chief and Derek, for attending. And I know that there was other members of the fire department that attended the meeting. We walked away with an understanding as to how we were to proceed, which the decision was tabled until the next meeting. And I've sent you an email, copy of an email that I communicated with the Housing Authority Chairman, Tom Tebow. And basically the decision has been tabled until the 16th of February. The board wants to see the area that we would be looking to travel across. They would also like the license agreement to have some indemnity included in it, which I didn't see that as a big issue. But the big issue is that even a temporary access easement requires, we're now hearing that it requires Mass Department of Housing and Development Authority. So we've asked the chairman to reach out to the MHDC or MHDHD or whatever it is, and see what requirements that they would have to be incorporated into this temporary access easement. We haven't heard anything back. I did hear from the chairman this afternoon or early this evening. And Tom had responded to my points. He agrees that the next meeting would be on the 16th of February. He hasn't heard from any of the committee members. Item number 2, if they want to see the site, I had offered to meet them there to show them. If there was going to be a quorum, we'd have to have it publicly noticed, but he has not heard back from any of his committee members as to whether or not they want to actually visit the site, but we will certainly meet with them if they need to. Item number 3, he has sent the license agreement off to the state to get their feedback. He has not heard back from them. And that would follow through for item number 4. And then his last parting statement was he will work to get a response from the DHCD as quickly as possible. If the lot turns out to be viable for the town, meaning our lot turns out to be viable for the town, he feels it'll be a heavy lift on all parties to get this deal done. In other words, the state does not release land does not look favorably to releasing land. They like to hold on to as much as possible. To paraphrase our meeting, I would say that there were a number of committee members who did not agree that that site was the appropriate site for fire headquarters. And they were asking about, how the site was chosen and why. They were also asking if we have any guarantees that we can actually get the secondary access across the Lowe's parcel. I had told them that we're working on this in a parallel track, but I couldn't give them any guarantees. And the opinion I got was that I didn't get a feeling that there were any of the members that supported our pursuit of this parcel. So I walked away from it feeling that we're going to continue pushing to get this temporary access easement, but it could be a real leap to eventually use that parcel or eventually get a permanent access across that parcel. If it's this difficult to get a temporary access easement, getting a permanent one, I feel would be extremely difficult. That's just my own opinion. So that's kind of where we're at. We're continuing to push forward. But I didn't walk away from that meeting. I thought, honestly, I thought we were going to go into that meeting. It was going to be an easy lift to get a temporary, to get someone to agree we could walk across their parcel. But didn't turn out that way. So another month goes by. I can talk about the Lowe's parcel as well. But if you have any questions on this one, we can talk about the Housing Authority first, if you'd like.
Does anybody that didn't get to be a part of that meeting have any questions about that? No? Okay. Going with the Lowe's.
Yeah, this has been equally fun. We originally were working through Lowe's with no success. So we were able to, Scott had gotten me a copy of the most recent deed that was filed, because apparently that property was recently purchased by a different investment firm, which has a number of entities across the country. We finally found someone that we could speak to just before Christmas. That firm is, I forget the name of the real estate investment trust, but we went around and around with several directors there for a while, and they ultimately came back to us. We'd sent them plans, they had sent us some comments back, and they ultimately said that the decision, because it's a leasehold agreement, the decision is with Lowe's. So after spending the time with this real estate investment trust, they pointed us in the direction of someone that we could speak to at Lowe's. We did reach out to them last week. We finally heard back from them this week, and I've copied you on the third-party consent form, which I coincidentally just received from them this morning, and immediately filled it out and sent it back to them. So they have a meeting next Thursday, which this will be on the agenda, and I will attend to see if they have any questions. But this is the very early stages of, well, we've been trying to reach someone for about a month and a half. So they've got to look at it, and I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions. I can't assume what's going to take place next week, but we're going to attend the meeting and see what happens. And speaking with David McKinley from Castle Booze, he is aware that there is a drainage easement back there, and we've been made aware by the real estate investment trust who owns the property that there actually may be structures in those locations. And I've asked them for as-built information, and I have not been able to receive anything from them. So I'm hoping that I get more from those next week. But I don't have anything positive to share with you this evening on either the front access or the rear emergency vehicle only access in the back.
Okay.
If I can talk on this for a minute. After the Housing Authority Board meeting last week, the week before, I spoke with the town manager on this the next day as well, who's aware of it, and he's got some other concerns too. The reason we chose Glenovich Way was really based on the response study, the available land. It was the best response point once we got onto Route 18 from that point by Thayer Street, or Glenovich Way, for the rest of to gain access to the rest of the town of Abington. That's the number one reason, as well as the possible availability of the land. That being said, we have to face the reality that, as attractive as that site is for those reasons, the reality is there's a lot of opposition to this location. And they're valid reasons, and there's varied reasons. And now we're running into lengthy legal issues that are only going to continue to bog this process down. The longer this process gets bogged down, the higher the price for the overall project is going to go up just over time, as well as now possible legal costs, or if there's any other land acquisitions. My suggestion to this committee, and I don't want to speak for the town manager, but he agreed, we're in agreement on this, to be honest with you. I think we seriously have to consider walking away from the Glenovich Way site. As difficult as that's going to be, we're going to be here 20 years from now. Well, you're going to be here 20 years from now. Somebody is still trying to get a fire station there. I don't believe that the community has buy-in to this location. This still has to go through a town meeting vote and then ultimately a ballot vote for the funding of this entire project. I'll be honest with you, I don't have confidence that we're going to prevail on, perhaps if not both, but certainly not the funding portion of this location. I think the community understands we need a fire station for a number of reasons, including access, including there's legalities with the housing authority, there's legalities trying to get through Lowe's. We haven't even begun to talk to the numerous private large condominium complexes that are around there that are also going to be abutters, that I'm also hearing opposition from them before it's even started. I think we really need to consider walking away from this site and trying to find something else to try to move this project forward, as well as some of the other large projects that the town's looking at as well. I think that might come up later, but there may be some solutions in there as well.
All right. Well, it's still something that I think the committee still has to pursue, just because it's our option right now, but we can definitely discuss other possibilities. We have the feasibility study that did show other options in there, but they were ruled out because the Glenovich Way site was the preferred site. But starting to think outside the box, I think we need to start looking at what other opportunities we could have. Does Pomeroy Associates have anything that they have found out that could come up as something that we could discuss?
We have a couple thoughts, and see, we weren't involved with the studies or the search, so we're kind of probably the lowest person on the totem pole right now as it relates to this. And Taylor and I were talking about this, and we'd really like to, peel this back and understand. Can you just hold on one second?
Yeah, we'd like to look at this as a positive, and take an opportunity to look at different sites, different options, not necessarily just moving forward with Glenowitz. I think everybody feels it a little, that we just seem to be hitting roadblock after roadblock. So we started to talk today. We looked at a couple options. KBA was helpful enough to put together some things that we can look at tonight. Do you want to continue on that, Rick?
Yeah, I think that would be valuable. And, we can talk about what the information that we have at this point on some parcels. But I think we need to do a deep dive and determine if there's anything. There's one parcel that the town manager spoke to me about today, the DPW parcel, that we'll take a look at in a moment. And in talking with Sean, it sounded as if that was maybe something that was on the table very early on under the previous administration, but it was passed on. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess where I'm going with this is that if there were sites that were thought about that were passed on because maybe they were passed on because it felt that Glenowitz Way was going to be the ideal location, but it's not. So, maybe something else will rise to the top, or maybe a new parcel. I was speaking with a gentleman that lives in town that we're working with on another project in a different town. He represents a community in a different town, but he had mentioned that there may be an opportunity to get some land from is it Sion Landscaping?
Yeah.
And there's an adjacent parcel that's owned by a construction company that's not used or something like that. So there may be some opportunities here to refresh on this, as Taylor had mentioned, and something may rise to the top that was passed on before or is new to the process. But I agree with the summation the chief had in his conversations with the town manager, where even if miraculously we get approved by the housing authority and miraculously we get approved by Lowe's, it seems like there's a lot of town sentiment that's not supporting this parcel. So we could spend a lot of time and money getting this thing ready to go and still not get it past the town vote.
Yep.
In talking to Derek, I had asked him if a land RFP was done at some point, and Derek had thought that Scott may have reached out, or there was an RFP done. So I was hoping for some clarification on that, but I don't know if that's an option. Did you really just put it out to private owners? It has to be put out on the street that way, so everybody has the opportunity to to answer it. So I don't know if anybody had any more information on that.
Yeah, either the chief or Sean might remember. Scott did reach out to essentially everybody on the Route 18 corridor and said that he got no feedback. But I don't remember if that was an actual official request or if that was just a reach out. So I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think that was more of a query, not really a full RFP or RFQ on that. Yeah, it was just sending out for interest if anybody, possibly any of the businesses or any of the lots or landowners that may be considering selling it like that. You really get nothing on that. We at the time and I agree with Derek, we're really kind of considering that sweet spot, which is along the Route 18 corridor between 123 and 139 for the response time. That's really kind of the geographic center of town, but that also allows us the major routes to get to the western and southern parts of the town as well. So that's what we're focusing on. I mean, we could put realistically this in a fairly large part of the town of Abington. There's not a lot of land available. You wouldn't really want to locate one in the extreme outskirts of the town, up on the Brockton line by North Quincy Street. That would be not a good response time for most of the time. But for most of the responses that we're able to make, both for fire and EMS, we are meeting the 8-minute limit, which satisfies both the NFPA and the American Heart Association, both of those major jobs that we do. So ideally, obviously, the location that we chose was the best. But I think now, just because of reality, we have to consider expanding out from those points a little bit. But we're still reaching, I think, realistic response times, as long as we stay pretty much toward the center of town as best we could.
Right. So to kind of backtrack a little bit too. So when we did the feasibility study, after we went through North School, we visited that we did a feasibility study on that property, and then we kind of opened up the doors to other land. And we, as an office, we went through and to the GIS downloaded all town-owned properties in town with a substantial size. And there was only a number of them that came to the top of the list, the DPW site being one of them. And at the time, it was just addressed, it was talked about quickly, and it was just like, no, too much effort just to kind of rework that site. And the DPW, they had some updates and whatnot. So it just kind of got passed along, and then we got into these other number of sites down the 118 corridor or 18 corridor, and just kind of jumped around all over the place. And then we landed at the Glenwood's Way site. And I can't remember exactly, but I also do believe the previous town administrator or town manager had conversations with the housing authority and said it was not a big deal and whatnot. So, I mean, granted, we're in reality now, going through the process, going through the steps, it's starting to get to the paper trail. It's slowing down, becoming more complicated, if you will, with all of these avenues. So that's a quick refresher. I know Rick and Taylor, you're new to the team, but and I do agree with Derek and John. I believe Scott did just do a kind of an informal reach out onto some of the property owners along 18, but not a formal RFP went out on the street. I believe he commented that he was going to do something that those lines, but I think he just didn't get any feedback, so that's where it died.
Yeah. That may be an option. I'm not saying we have to definitely go that route. Maybe there's some options on the table, but it just reminds me of what we just went through in another town, and we spun our wheels for a year or two, and because the town just kept giving us different sites that we'd look into, and it just didn't work. And finally, we put it out for a public RFP, and a landowner came forward, and we ended up, we moved forward with that land, and that ended up working out perfectly. So you just never know.
Right.
One of the issues that came up since we looked initially and quickly at the location on Central Street where the DPW garage is, honestly, we didn't think there was a lot of room there, and it really wasn't our land. It's another department owns it. Since that time, now the DPW is also looking for facility for their location. They've had issues with their buildings. In fact, two of them are starting to come down from the last storm. In talking with the town manager, and again, his job is townwide. We're obviously focused on the fire department. However, we are one piece of a large pie. He's trying to find, is there a way we could perhaps coexist two departments or numerous departments if we also included the building and the Board of Health in our project, which we wanted to do anyway. Is there a way to look at the DPW land and almost completely redo that whole site for a facility or facilities that would satisfy both departments, both the fire department with the Board of Health and the building department on our portion, as well as a new DPW garage or whatever it is that they need. I really haven't talked to the DPW director directly on this. I think there is a shared interest that perhaps if that location was feasible to co-locate a number of town departments on that, it's probably much more financially efficient, and you might be able to sell that a lot better for the town. And I think there might be some more buy-in with that. From the town manager's standpoint, I agree with him, because he's trying to get all these projects solved and actually get them done under the, with all of us realizing that these are not cheap projects, and these are the taxpayers we're going to be asking to do it. So is there a way to do it more efficiently and still meet our needs That's our number one concern for this committee is the fire department needs number one. Mainly is, do we have enough room for the facility that we need, even if we have to redesign it, as well as the response times. The response times, I'm still comfortable from that location, even though it's a little increase from where Glenovich Way or the North School would be. This is a little bit in between the two of them. It may be, it's still, perfection's the enemy of good. And it may still be worth doing that as long as, we're still able to get all of our things. And from the DPW side, I don't know what they're looking for yet. That would have to be another study. Is there still room in that whole site to reconfigure it for whatever they're going to need as well? So I'm not sure if KBA did any quick studies on that or not. You said you may have something to share with us. I haven't seen anything. It's very early in this, but I think we're at the point out of necessity that we really do have to re-examine and have an open mind to see what may be available, as well as now that we know that there's a DPW need as well, that we can't ignore that. When we initially started this, that wasn't one of the case. Now we're trying to see if the town can afford both things with, and make it an affordable project for everyone.
We have something we can show up that David had put together for us, David and Sean. But I think it's a fabulous idea, because now you're creating a nucleus, the emergency response area. Your three largest departments in town from a response perspective are right there. I think it's fabulous. The only risk is that now you've created a much larger financial project. And is it more difficult to get it approved? We're in town meeting floors all the time. And one of the biggest questions that people ask when we're presenting a new facility, they're always looking at the government, the select board or the town manager or whomever, and saying, okay, yeah, we agree that the fire department needs a new facility. But what else is there? Show me your capital plan. So I need to know that you're not going to come before me in 2 years after we approve this fire station, that you've got another big ask. So I'm going to see your plan for the next 5 to 10 years. So I look at this two ways. I look at this as a large project now. If we add in the DPW facility and a reconfiguration of that campus, it's going to be expensive. And it may scare some people, but the smarter folks in town that realize that the fire department issue is not going away and the DPW issue is not going away. So this team has put together a great approach to address both of them. And as you had mentioned, there's some efficiencies built into that rather than developing two parcels. So it's just the first things that I was thinking about when I was talking to Scott earlier. But you want to pull up what David did quickly. I think it was using the current footprint and just sort of giving us an idea of what massing would look like. But
I didn't know if KBA wants to pull it up or I can.
Sure. I think Wendy just had her hand up. Do you have a question, Wendy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually I wasn't sure if it was time for input or questions, but I do want to say that from the beginning with the Glenowitz, I definitely understand everybody's concerns with that. I think that wasn't the storage place on Shaw in 18 a interest in one point, and now it's not going forward? I know it was a little bit smaller. Can that still be looked at? And then I heard somebody was willing to either give or sell land to the town on 18. I don't know if that is the Sione's project, but I love this DPW idea. But and I think that it would be a huge cost savings no matter what, because we already have the land. And then if we sell the two fire stations, that's even more money that we'll be able to get. So I don't know. I think this is really ideal. Or if anything, can the DPW go to one of our fire stations and, work from there, like with a little rebuild or something like that, and we take over their land? I don't know how big their land is. I'm just giving a suggestion. And I think that I feel like we took a lot of time, though, trying to establish a relationship with with Lowe's and who owns it, and also with with the other board for the senior place next door. I mean, if anybody goes into a deed, you can automatically see if it's a leasehold or not. I just feel like if we're going to put out RPFs, we got to do it now. We can't wait any longer. This is too much time that's already being spent. We got to move quick. And, if you need any help making calls or anything, just let me know. But I mean, anything I can do to help try to get this going. But let's see what you got. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Wendy.
So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So as Rick was noting earlier, KB actually did the Abington police facility. What was that, 10 or 12 years ago? No, 2006. So a little bit longer, a little longer ago. So
Pre-Sean.
Yeah, it was pre-me. Sorry, Todd was here. But basically, the footprint that we're showing here is the exact same footprint that we had. They've been using for all the feasibility studies on all the other properties. He's still got the 5 bays. He still has the health department, which is down here. But as you can kind of see, it's if the building theoretically stays the same square footage, same footprint, there definitely need to be some reconfiguring of entry points, access points, ingress and egress as it correlates with the police department's current functions. I'm not entirely sure what this facility is here, but I believe it is a garage structure for the DPW that has a new roof. This facility here, Todd, you can probably speak to it better than I can, but this is part of the police department. Is it impound lot or something?
It's a storage building, whether it's pre-engineered, I can't remember exactly from the top of my head. I think it's a pre-engineered metal building. It's used for storing evidence, processing some evidence vehicles, as well as bicycle storage, long-term storage, things of that nature.
And then you have the basketball courts here too. So bottom line is, just kind of showing some quick diagrams of your existing footprint, whether it's located up front, whether it's theoretically located out back. It's fairly tight. It has opportunity depending on rearrangement of the current footprint, which we haven't, as Derek and John know. I mean, that was just phase 1 of the footprint and the floor plan. There's many more options that we haven't even dove into because we're not going to do it without the site. But between these footprints, whether, definitely can't fit both buildings, whether it's a DPW, they go elsewhere or vice versa. And then if there's any opportunity for more land, we don't know that yet. But, it's a potential valuable option or a valid option with current rework of the organization of the site. Understandably, it's very diagrammatic. We do understand that this back corner has pretty steep grade sloping away towards, I believe, which is the cemetery here. So it's a pretty steep grade. So really, this back corner really isn't that usable. But between these two options, it could work with some altering of not necessarily program, but altering of the plan.
But it would be your opinion that both departments, meaning DPW and the fire department, it would be a stretch to get them both done, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, it would be.
Yeah, as you can see from the plan.
Oh, go ahead, Todd.
As you can see from the plan, Rick, and all the apparatus bay, which is the leg that is kind of parallel to the street, that can fit. It's a little tight, but with shared access points, we can get around the building. We can get all the equipment and the staff around the building. Again, reworking the plan, I think we can make this work such that it's not sitting, the edge of the building isn't sitting right on the edge of the street, and we allow for some public parking and staff parking. What that does challenge, and I know at least from I think the plan that you sent over, Rick, there's another lot just to the east of the police department. I don't know if that's available. I don't know if that's open. It appeared to be, at least in my initial thought, as I was looking this over with Dave earlier, if the DPW has enough room to occupy that back portion, we might be able to connect and get them access, or cleaner access, I should say,
Mhm.
through that lot that's to the east. And
Yep.
then a combination of the entry drive to the cemetery, and that may make this work in total. But looking at the quantity of equipment that they have, the quantity of buildings that they have, it may be a shoehorn. We may be trying to fit 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag.
Mhm. That was my first comment to the town manager this morning or this afternoon when I saw that plan, was that if we could acquire that parcel easterly of the police station, it would make it a lot more viable. He did tell me that there was some sort of confrontation, or not confrontation, but there may have been a situation where the house needed to be raised on that parcel, and it may have created some conflict with the town. But I didn't get any more history than that. But adding that parcel would certainly be a benefit.
I would agree. If that other side was able to be acquired, I think it's going to be tight, but with reconfiguring the design, it's definitely plausible.
Totally agree. I think the design needs to just be redesigned, whatever that part is in the front to go in the back. Just move it all around.
Well, that's going to be done, I'm sure, in our next phase is the schematic design. But like Sean and Todd had said, until we really 100% know where we're going, it's hard to really set that parameter done.
Right. What is that house next door? Is that does someone live there, or is that, I forget, was that was it burnt down? Am I thinking of the wrong one?
What property are you talking about?
I believe
the property right next door.
I believe the property has been removed. The house, the structure that was there has been removed.
Okay.
And the parcel is vacant.
Oh, well, then that's a lot easier, right? And the person that is in the house next to that owns it, or it's just somebody else owns the land they've moved? They don't live there.
Yeah, that's not something I'm familiar with.
Okay.
I think if I could on this, I think the next step would be, or a missing step, we really have to have a conversation between myself, the police chief, the DPW director, and the town manager, and probably KBA to see what each department needs. I mean, the police are going to have some concerns. I haven't even talked to the police chief about this, just because it's around his building. He's in a butter. We'd have to find out who is the landowner, because I know that parcel of land to the east that was involved in housing court, I do not know the final, what the jurisdiction of that land of the owner is. Obviously, we have to see what the DPW needs, because I don't believe the DPW is just going to abandon this site and go homeless to give it to us, unless they know of any other parcel of land. I would not expect that from them, nor really we would do that to them. So I think we would need to have like an internal department head agreement or discussion to kind of make sure everybody would be in favor of this, and then bring it to the next 1 or 2 levels. So, okay, we've got a couple of green lights here. Let's really explore. This is what the DPW needs. This is what we need. What do the police still need or not need? And what is the, what is the status of that land just to the east of it? That I think we need the town manager or the assessors department to find out that. So I think we'd have to have a meeting separately just to kind of, are we all going to be able to play well together? And really, are we going to be able to fit everything there? What are our needs? I think that's missing.
One of the suggestions I was going to have was that sometimes it's very difficult for an operator to determine their exact needs. And this is where we see someone like KBA in performing a programming session with the DPW to understand exactly what their operational needs are and what type of facility and then KBA could tell you what type of facility and size of facility would accommodate that. I'm assuming that the department has grown, and it wouldn't make sense to give them like square footage, in a new building. They'd be probably growing out of it in the very first year, if not before they even opened. So there may be a need, there may be it may make sense to do a programming session with the DPW to understand what their building size needs are.
Would that be something that they need to discuss separately outside of a feasibility study, or would that have to be inside of an entire study on their own?
Well, I don't want to answer for the town, but it could be something where I think you probably could engage KBA to represent the town and do that. You know, it could be a useful tool to help the director of the DPW understand what his needs are.
Perhaps they could do a scaled back version of a program, because really this site doesn't work unless you can get all three to commingle kind of on this site. So if you find out that the size of your DPW is going to be just too big to even mingle with the other two, then this site doesn't work, because once you move to DPW, then you got to find a place for them. So,
well, in that case, I would agree with the chief. I think that they need to have a discussion to see if it's something even worth looking forward to talk about. But if the chief and the other department heads and the town manager want to have that conversation with KBA, then maybe we could put this on an agenda for our next meeting if there's some something to look forward to talk to about.
Yeah, I will definitely reach out to the town manager to try to have him coordinate this to get us coming. We're all gearing up for the storm, so hopefully we can get it done this week. I can't guarantee that. And I certainly don't know what KBA's schedule is anyway, but I'll reach out to the town manager tomorrow and try to get this meeting together between us, and so we can at least have a foundation to begin on.
Well, Chief, our schedule, we're available as needed. So if you reach out, either Sean or I or both can be present when you need us.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about this? I think it's a good idea that we pursue this to have some other solid option to look at.
I totally agree. I think that we should definitely get a meeting done with all the department heads and KBA and see where we can go with this.
Okay.
I also think we should still look for option C as well.
Well, that would, I think, fall under doing an RFP.
Yeah.
Would that be the right thing to do coming from the OPM?
Yes, we could cobble together a draft on that pretty quickly. And, basically we want to identify what our, we put together a list of criteria that the facility has to meet, has to be on a numbered route, has to be so many square feet, has to be within this geographical area. And we put together the document, we'll put together a rating analysis, and it can get out pretty quickly. I know that KBA has done the exact same thing, and we've done it together on projects. So we could put something together pretty quickly on it. And then I think what you need to do is, once the document is prepared, just start knocking on doors, just dropping it off at property owners, and starting the process again, because there may be something that pops out here.
Yeah, it can be done on a parallel track, so we can work on this, and we can work on the DPW at the same time. But if nothing else, it at least insulates you from questions you might get down the road. Did you put out an RFP? Did you look at this? Did you look at that? And if you don't, even if you don't get responses back, you'll at least say, yes, we did go through that process and nobody answered it. Or yes, it did, but that property didn't work. So it's a good check.
Okay.
Rick, what authorization, if any, would you need to begin that RFP? Is that from this committee, which I believe this committee would be empowered to do should they choose to vote on that? And is there a dollar figure incurred with that?
The authorization, I would assume the committee would make the recommendation, and I would just double check with the town manager to make sure that he's in agreement with that, because we're all on the same team. And yes, this is beyond scope. We're sort of going back and scratching. But I can pull up. I wasn't prepared to answer that discussion, but it's not a real heavy lift. It's putting together the documents and putting together the rating criteria. And what we've done in other communities is that the committee is involved with the assessments, and it's pretty slick. So I know that I believe it would be an added service for KBA as well. But between us and them, we can get back to you with what we think the value of that is. I think it's got a huge value. What the cost of it would be, we can get back to you on.
Okay.
My suggestion to the committee may be if you take a vote to authorize this contingent on the town manager ultimately authorizing the spending funds. Although there are some funds available even for this committee to use, but just to, you might get one green light from this committee contingent on town manager agreeing to it too. That would free Rick and KBA up to go ahead just to save time.
All right. Well, if somebody wants to make the motion, we can have a vote on that.
I'll make the motion to everything that he just said.
Second.
Second. All right. Any discussion? All right. We'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor, we'll start with Wendy
Yes.
and Pete,
Yes.
Jared,
Aye.
and myself. Aye. All in favor. So that motion moves forward and we'll work on that. Anything else to discuss when it comes to moving forward with those two options so far?
May I just ask a quick question? I'm really sorry. There's 4 of us voted, right? How many people are on the committee?
7.
Do we have an? Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks.
Yep. I checked that before we started.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So if there's no other discussion on sites, I think we've covered a couple good ideas to move forward. The next step on the agenda was going to be to discuss design. Is there anything or any updates that we have for design, either from the OPM or from KBA?
No updates from KBA. I mean, we're kind of a little bit of a holding pattern until we move on to the next phase.
Okay.
One thing,
Go ahead, Todd.
I was just going to say one thing, Derek, that you may want to consider is just to kind of, not let anything keep going by the wayside is possibly schedule some of the meetings with Bob, our consultant, Bob Mitchell, to begin re-evaluating the program where it was, confirm that everything is there that you want. If there's anything that you may want to reconsider the size of, or based on the evolution of the last couple of years, there may be additional programs or programs that are no longer valid that may need to come out. Just initial, that initial discussion, kind of keeping the wheel spinning, if you would, not letting everything kind of stand still. And we can get Bob to engage with you and the chief and begin setting up those meetings, not in any major hurry, but just to kind of evaluate that program, again, to make sure that we're not going up in size drastically.
Okay. Maybe what we could do is in between now and our next meeting, everybody on the committee can go through our study. The program guide is in there, and we could make some notes and adjustments to anything on there that we can think of, and we can discuss it at our next quorum.
I think that when we do that, we should dovetail. We had a separate conversation when we were supposed to be meeting with Mr. Giosio a while ago. And what came out of that conversation was that there may be an opportunity to keep one of the stations and use that for longer term storage of equipment. And I think that the town manager had mentioned he has a need for some storage as well. So maybe there's a way that we can maybe downsize our master plan by using one of the existing stations just as an option, because prices are going up constantly. We need to, as Todd had mentioned, we need to make sure that we refresh on our programming and see if anything's changed. Maybe some needs have gone by the wayside. But if we can use one of the existing stations for part of our storage needs and downsize our new building, it's certainly an option we should keep thinking about.
Yep.
And one of the conversations we had with the town manager was he was considering perhaps keeping one of the stations just for municipal storage, even of just records, items, not necessarily even apparatus, or certainly not to operate from, because they are tied buildings, as we know. That kind of got us thinking of a few different things. If we had a station to the extreme north up in the Geosio land on 18, which kind of really didn't materialize yet, that possibly we could have not always manned substation at Station 2 in addition to store. We were looking at all different ideas. We're certainly open to trying to make this work one way or the other. They are tied buildings. There's a reason we're trying to replace them. That can't be ignored either. We'd be putting money into it. We're not sure if that's worth it. One of the other questions I had really for Todd, when he just mentioned going back to the Mitchell architect, the firematic architect, the overall program that we have now, the building footprint that we have, is based on all of the individual small rooms and areas specific to the needs of the Abington Fire Department. Are we able to, if we had to, reconfigure, take those same rooms and areas and reconfigure those kind of like pieces of a puzzle, but redesign it to fit the footprint of perhaps the DPW or somewhere else, to make it fit that area better, as opposed to just taking the same building and sticking it everywhere? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. And it's, any architect will tell you that the building has to reflect your site. There's no such thing as a flat site. There's no one size fits all. They're close, assemblies, but it's not. We've never been able to take a previous project and put it on another location without some level of modification, because it's got to reflect not only the site, and it's got to respond to the site, topographically, shape of the site, but it also has to reflect and respond to the way that the department operates in it. The number of firefighters that you have operating in your command structure is different than, if I was to say Carver or Chatham or, any other station that we've done around the Commonwealth. There's pieces and parts that are identical, decon, EMS storage, things of that nature, but how those things fit together and how they work and function is a direct reflection on your department. And we want to make sure that it responds to that, also direct reflection of the site. As you can see from the image that Sean had shared, as a quick, test fit, is this viable? We can fit it there. I don't think we're within the setbacks of the west side of the site, if you would, or the street side of the site, but we can fit it there. Now, if by fitting it there, is it going to function for the department? That's where, reworking the plan is going to come into play. Because
again, now if we're considering adding another department, the DPW, there may be, there's the fire side, of the needs of the fire department specifically, that we've got some very unique needs that no other department in this town has based on what we do, fire, EMS, building quarters, as well as there's an administrative portion that could be shared. There's some, I think, an appetite of shared space with the building, with the DPW, with the building department, with the Board of Health. And now perhaps maybe some of the administrative portions of the DPW, if they're fit into one portion of this building, kind of separate from, the operating of the firefighters, paramedics, and separate from the apparatus bay, it's kind of like a third portion of the building. There may be a way to bring this in, which would reduce the overall cost of two complete separate projects, the fire station, DPW, if we're able to share some of these and then still make sure that each individual department has specifically what they need. Some things there would be a separation, but there may be some things that could be shared as well. So that's why I said we may have to like take our building apart piece by piece with the areas we had that were drawn by Mitchell, and then kind of reconfigure them into a whole new type of building that may fit on that space better than what we have now.
Absolutely. It's we've worked with enough. I mean, if you went to our Mansfield project, it's a public safety building, combined police fire. So we could actually even just throwing it out there. And I know it's public television, so I don't want the police chief to get mad at me. I want to be able to drive through Abington again, but we could even make an attachment for the office function that may share some space with the PD, or share the utilize a community room that's already built there, the EOC that's there. Again, familiar with that building, but there's a multitude of ways that we can look at this and solve the problem or solve the challenge. We just need to, if that's the location, kind of revisit everything, revisit the needs of the DPW. I can't remember who said it earlier, but somebody mentioned the fact that they're probably going to go up in size. Looking at what you have there, and they have a good amount of building, they're definitely going to go up in size. When you look at the modern DPWs and what's required relative to OSHA, DEP, the wash bays, things of that nature, they're going to increase, and there's going to be a bigger demand. But the interesting part of that is their building type tends to be long and linear with a center drive-through. So they come into one side, out the other, and everything kind of parks off at an angle. That's where if we could get that eastern property, literally it's a direct in and out, and it's really a good scenario. And whether or not the office function becomes part of the fire and Board of Health and building department building, or is kind of a lump off the side of that, just becomes part of the dialogue as to what can we fit on that site and how can it work. Now they do need some lay down space for things of like sand and salt sheds and stuff of that nature. So that may start to squeeze that, as opposed to squeeze that site is what I mean by that. But we've got to get into it and kind of look at it and how can we solve that problem? How can we creatively think to solve that problem? And we may go up more to allow the apparatus bay to take up more footprint that's on the site, or be the dominant footprint that's on the site, and then the administration and the sleeping quarters goes vertical. So it's just, I love to say it's just like a game of Tetris. We have all these little cubes. We just got to put them together in the right order to solve the puzzle.
We can work on that, though. I think it's definitely something that's doable. But that actually raises a question. I know this is something we discussed a couple of years ago at the beginning of all this. We were just looking at a fire station, but would building on that particular lot or combining with the DPW count us as a public safety building, or give us access to potential funds that fund public safety buildings?
It does, and it's an interesting thought of, and I never thought of it. I've always thought of public safety as police and fire. and Rick, I know you're kind of smirking in there because that's the areas that I primarily cover. But we did a complex that actually was police, fire, and DPW all in one site, actually right up in Sharon. Building wasn't all interconnected, but they shared a site, and it was the public safety site. And when you kind of get down to not the argument of it, but the discussion of it, is DPW is a public function, but they're called on in the emergencies just as much as police and fire guys are. Not the same type of emergency, but still in the emergency situations, they're responding, they're coming in, and they're rolling out with their trucks. So absolutely does qualify as a public safety. It would be a little bit more of a public safety complex rather than a single building, especially if we don't tie directly into the PD. But whatever funding that would be out there, and I don't necessarily know that there's a lot available, would qualify for that, that funding source or assistance.
Okay, that's something good. Okay. Any other questions about the design portion of this? No? Okay, I guess.
I have a question, but I love the idea of all this in a safety site and everybody intermingling, and I think it's a great idea to look into. Good job, Todd. That was awesome. Good presentation. Thank you.
I can't take all the credit for it. It was definitely, came to us via Rick and Taylor, and I just cracked the whip on our landscape guy to get the rough sketch done.
Well, thank you. All right, if there's nothing left to discuss and nobody has any questions, we can move on to figuring out our schedule for what is the next steps for what we should be doing. And I think it's just a rehash of what we've already kind of discussed. We working on the department heads and the chief having a meeting and having that conversation, getting a recommendation to Scott about doing an RFP, looking into the information about that property east of the police station. And is there anything else that we need to discuss for any other scheduled items?
If I may, do we want to continue discussions with Lowe's and with the Housing Authority?
I think we'd look to the recommendation of Palmer Associates on, is it something that we completely abandon before we have another plan in place?
I think what my recommendation would be continue. The lifting is pretty much done with the Housing Authority, and the ball is in their court to get back to us with a modified agreement and what our next steps are going to be. So let's let that play out. We have a meeting scheduled in February. Let's see how things go with that.
Okay.
We've also sowed the seed with Lowe's, and I'll hear from them next week. They're probably going to get back to me. I'll attend the meeting if they'll allow me to, and we'll hear back from them as to what additional information they would need to make a decision. My guess is that the Lowe's decision is going to dovetail into an interruption of the drainage easement, any infrastructure. It's going to require engineering. And, those will be things that we'll be relying on from KBA. So let's find out what happens next week. And then we can make a valued decision as to whether or not we want to pursue it any further and invest any more time and money into it. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
From the committee?
I would agree with that at this point.
Okay.
I think the most important thing is getting the heads of the fire, DPW, and police together to discuss it and see if it's feasible with them first, and then we can go forward from there. But until we do that, then there's no really sense discussing it in detail until they all agree that this is something we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
I agree too, and I think though, I'm hoping that the department heads could get together quite quickly before the meeting that Rick may attend with Lowe's. And when is the Lowe's meeting again? And when are you speaking again to the seniors division?
The Lowe's meeting is the first meeting with Lowe's is next Thursday.
And what is that date? Sorry. Is that the
Pardon me?
The third?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Housing Authority meeting is, I believe, on the 16th of February. Yeah, 16th of February.
16th of February, 6 p.m.
Okay. So I don't know. I think that if we can squeeze in, if the department heads are willing and able to squeeze in a meeting and at least talk about it with town manager or KBA, something like that, right? And then we go from there. I don't know if we want to schedule a temporary meeting just in case it doesn't go well. For after, I don't know, either way, I guess schedule a meeting, maybe temporary, for like after the meeting with the department heads. That way we can already get started on what comes next. And then if it doesn't work out with them, then we already have the other meeting set for after when Rick meets with Lowe's and talks to everybody. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And
So,
also work on the RFP.
Yes, definitely. That's huge. We should have been doing that all along.
well, do we, talking with KBA and OPM, do we think that we want to push off a meeting from 2 weeks from today, or do we want to wait till the week after the housing authority?
I think we should, I don't want to wait till February 16th.
Okay.
We need to move this forward.
Agree.
So what I'll get together with KBA tomorrow, and we can send over an estimate of what the cost would be for the RFP and site reviews. My guess is it's going to be more time consuming for KBA than for us, because if we do have viable sites, we're going to want them to do some planning, some plotting, some review of that to make sure that it's viable for us. But we'll talk that through and we'll get back to you on that. But I would double check, Chief, if you're going to be talking with the town manager tomorrow, I would just double check with him and see that he agrees that we should be putting an RFQ out or RFP out there for land. And we'll get started with it, roughing it out on this side.
Yeah, I've got a meeting with him in the morning. With any luck, I could meet with the other department heads tomorrow too. I don't know what their schedule are. Rick, are you able to send either me or Scott, the town manager, or both of us, just a brief email, exactly all the things you're looking for? I just want to make sure I don't lose the translation what you're looking for as well.
Absolutely. That's a very good suggestion.
So
And I'm going to try to get our meeting as quick as we can, possibly tomorrow. I know we're all gearing for the storm, especially the DPW. They're going to get the brunt of it. But I think we can hopefully fit a meeting in if everybody's available. At least the department head meetings, the town manager. And, we'll start there. Then we'll reach out to Pomeroy as well as KBA and go to the next step.
It's a perfect example why a complex works well, especially during these planning events for emergency management. Everybody's in the same space, same spot. Okay, so I'll send off an email with what we've just discussed, and I would suggest that we stay on tap for a meeting 2 weeks from today. If something can materialize sooner, we can meet sooner, but let's just at least plan on 2 weeks from today.
okay,
That makes sense?
I think that's February 9th.
correct.
Yes.
Hey, Rick, do you see any benefit to us joining you at the Housing Authority meeting? Because I think, if I remember correctly, and Sean, this is more in your brain than mine, unfortunately. It was a sliver of a property. There's nothing developable. I'm not even going to be able to say it. Sorry. That in the area that we're looking to even gain access across, it's almost like we're just looking for an easement. They can keep the property. We just need a right-of-way easement across for a driveway. And just say that the DPW and the town's going to take care of cleaning it. They don't have to worry about it. But,
Yeah, we had given them the graphics, and we didn't really get too much into the viability of that parcel as to whether or not it had any value. But I think that at this next meeting, I think if you're willing to attend, I think it would certainly help in describing the parcel. And maybe it's at that point we start. I was hoping to get on the land and start doing a wetlands delineation, because the oversight map indicates that a good portion of it is wooded marsh. But I didn't want to make that statement without knowing exactly what it is. But maybe it's valuable to bring that up and say, look, this property could be junk to begin with. So it's okay for us to travel across. We can create that access way with culverts and all. But to build on it would be not a viable option for them. So yeah, I agree. Why don't you put it on the schedule? I'll send you an invite.
please.
Todd, just to let you know too, at that meeting with them, I did explain to them really, we were just looking for the temporary easement just to get some drilling and boring samples in there to see if it's even a viable project. There wasn't much of an appetite even for a temporary site at this point. It was put off. So I think that they have a number of concerns, and they're not wrong, but there was certainly some trepidation there. So.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll shoot off a summary email to everybody.
All right, great. Thank you. At this point, I guess if there's nothing else to discuss, we can take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor
Aye.
Aye.
and opposed? All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.